I first of all welcome each and everyone for this wonderful session. We all know the situation is different. We never had got this kind of experience in our life. Everything is locked. We are at home. But sometimes we feel when our spouses, they simply say we are homemaker. In this whole universe and planet, we all have become homemaker. So the beauty is at home, what is going to happen? We cannot change the present scenario, but always a futuristic approach, an optimistic view will certainly drive something better for the people, for the society, for the country, and the whole ecosystem. So this webinar session, what we are planning to get the best minds of the world who have just done amazing contribution to the society and still trying to help the whole humanity in a better way. So in this scenario, this is one of the best platform that we can invite and request our best ideators, best person, best experienced person to share their insights and to make the world think that yes, there is always a will, there is always a way, there is always something to do wherever you want to do. So what I'm just going to tell about in all this scenario, what to do next, how to combat this scenario. With this great idea session, the objective is to spread the ideas for betterment of society, for the whole country and for whole humanity. Through this webinar series, I would like to engage each and every people all across who want to contribute to the society in a better way. And it's the best thing that I can say. We all are very fortunate to have a person for this amazing seminar who just accepted our invitation to share his views, to share his ideas, and share his insights for all of us. And he's none other than Mr. R.S. Sarma sir. He was a senior IAS officer. He worked in different capacity in government of Bihar, government of Jharkhand, and government of India also. He was chief secretary of government of Jharkhand. He was principal secretary in many departments. He was secretary to government of India in department of electronics and technology and information. His wide experiences, amazing. Presently, sir is chairman of TRI. That means Network Information and Technology. He understands very well. And actually, he does not require any proper introduction. He is one institution I can see. So it is always good to hear him, to get his insights, to get his blessings. I invite and I say, everyone, please join hands together to welcome him, in greeting him by just simply holding hand in a namaste mood to sir, we are here to get your insight and just to hear you, because this is one thing that we always want to get from you, and this is the right time that we all will get enriched from all your knowledge and experience. So please, Sarma sir, over to you. We are here to hear you. So please, sir, address us. It's a great honor for all of us. Sarma sir, please.
Well, thank you, Rajiv. Can you hear me, all friends? I hope, okay, fine, wonderful. So, first of all, I would have loved to come down to Ranchi and, talk to all of you in person. And I always, Ranchi is my second home in some sense. I have worked there for a long time. I've also worked there and, as deputy commissioner in Dhanbad and, in various other places, Purnia, Begusara and Bihar. So I have very great, sweet memories of that place, and I have not missed any chance to go to Ranchi. This time around, because of lockdown, obviously I can't go, but then, I have not, when you invited me to participate in this webinar series, I immediately accepted because that again connects me back to my old state of Jharkhand. So I'm truly grateful to you guys for inviting me. Of course, all of us know it's a very, very difficult time we are living in, and I think all of us in our lives must not have seen such time. You know, in fact, the word lockdown also we heard for the first time, many of us, after, you know, China locked down Wuhan. Similar to the word tsunami, we had heard only when tsunami came to Japan and India, and, you know, there were a lot of destruction. So I think these are some of the natural, you know, natural, unnatural, we can't say, but some of the natural things which have happened and which have really forced us in a way that, you know, one way it has been very traumatic for the world. It still continues to be traumatic. At the same time, we also realize, and humanity always realizes, that in every, you know, sort of adversity, there is also an opportunity. So I think one should always look at the positive side of things. And I think the issue to discuss today is how we can sort of live with this situation, and what are the imperatives of this pandemic for the world, for humanity, and for India specifically. So today I'll probably like to talk maybe for about, you know, 15-20 minutes. This is 4:08, so maybe I'll you know, talk till about 4:30 or something, or maybe 4:25. Broadly, what are the trends and what are the consequences and what are the opportunities for our country? I think that's one thing which I will speak about. One is that, you know, as I said, that this whole things have, the whole issue has changed. Now it has changed the world for everybody. For example, for students, it has changed because initially schools did not take any action, but then suddenly they realized that the children, if they are not sort of, they will lose touch with their studies. So many of these schools have started video conferencing, teaching by video conferencing. So similarly, you know, telehealth is another area which has started. So we have realized that, you know, information and communication technology, imagine today if there was a lockdown 20 years back, and there was no way of communicating with each other, how we could have survived. I think the only way we have felt less frustrated, the only reason why we have felt all connected, is because of the telecommunication. It's because of the information technology, because of the internet, because of the, you know, YouTubes, and because of various kinds of, you know, stuff. That is how I think we have remained connected. And I think this is one infrastructure which has given us a feeling that we still are connected, can talk to each other. And, you know, today we are talking to each other, sitting at various places in our homes, in our, you know, and today we are having meetings. In fact, we are having open house discussions in the TRAI on various issues of telecom on this kind of, you know, video conferencing. So we, and in this, we also realized that, you know, it was not really a matter of attitude. I mean, it's as good as conducting a meeting sitting at home as it is conducting in the office. So then we suddenly realize that it's not so bad after all. So we can live and we can do our things. We can interact with people. We can remain in touch without touching each other, you know, in a way. So that I think is happened. But overall, the trends in the near future to come will be huge. They will be huge in the area of, you know, banking, for example, retail, e-commerce, etc., education, health, agriculture, industry. So I think these are some of the areas which are you know, going to use technology in a big way. Schools are going online. Video conferencing platforms have come up. For example, Zoom, the one on which we are having a video conferencing right now, one would not have heard the name. So Zoom has come up. Microsoft has, you know, started a platform called Team, and Google Meet also has started. There are Skype for business, Skype. There are multiple platforms which have started on video conferencing, and telehealth is going to be a big way. In fact, we are the government has formed a group which is actually, I am also a member of that group, which is looking into the citizen platform for post-COVID world. And one of the platforms which we realized is it should be a telehealth platform. So people should have similar to the experience which you have in various let's say e-commerce site, where you can go and you can find out as to if you want to buy a commodity, you want to find out what is the best price, which is the best quality. Similarly, in a telehealth and open interoperable telehealth system, you will be able to essentially meet the doctor, talk to them, get a prescription, get medicines, get diagnostic tests and stuff like that. So we are developing that open health systems network. So that's going to be a new normal for the health part. Home broadband is very necessary, because you can see, you can have video conferencing like this, or you can work from home, or various other entertainment related issues you can have. This is important. In fact, nowadays, the men are doing the most unskilled job, and the one which I am doing is basically cleaning the utensils, in my home. So that's a very interesting. I realized that this is the only thing which I can do at my home. So I offered to my wife that, look, I can't cook, I don't have that talent, but I can do. So all of us are learning new. Bartan manjana can be a very unskilled job, but it is it is the only skill I have. So I'm doing that part. Similarly, e-commerce, court proceedings are going to happen on this platform. Enterprises are going to use it in a big way. Sports and entertainment. Today, you have situations where you find people are playing without audiences, and all this is being beamed real time in the homes of the people. So there are no people in the stadia, but they are watching the game. So that's happening. Industry automation will happen, because people would not like many people to be together, and automation will take place. Agriculture is another area where hopefully we will have more and more information technology. So I think we are going to see a lot of play of the information and communication technology in the near future. The world is going to see that.
True.
The question arises, are we really ready for it as a country? Do we really have the wherewithal to make that transition happen in the most painless way? So one is that what does it require? It requires, in my view, two things. One is it requires a ubiquitous connectivity. It requires a high broadband availability in all places. So that's one requirement. You must have realized that when your child wants, that he or she has to attend online classes, and suddenly you realize that there's no bandwidth at your home, and the video conferencing is not happening, the whole thing freezes, then you feel quite frustrated. So you wish that there was a better broadband availability. So this is just a trivial example, but I think in a more meaningful way, we require a highly reliable connectivity infrastructure. And unfortunately, let me share with you that India, unfortunately, does not have that. While India boasts of 1.2 billion mobile phones in this country, and everybody in this country has mobile phones, and we also have now 4G coming in, and in fact, our mobile networks transport more data than what US and China do together with their mobile wireless systems. But at the same time, 93% of our data, our internet thing comes from mobile. Only 7% comes from the fixed line. And you must have realized that mobile bandwidth is highly unreliable. You can't always be assured that your mobile will get the entire, it will give you a very good experience. So therefore, if you want to have an extremely good experience, you need to have fixed broadband, fixed line broadband. So whether it is fiber to home or it is some other way, you need to have that. Unfortunately, in India, we had 30 million, 3 crore mobile, fixed line phones in the year 2000. Today, we have just about 20 million, 2 crore. So the fixed line phones have actually vanished. वो खड़ गया वो fixed line phone. So we have reduced the number of fixed line phones rather than increasing them. So today we have a situation where we don't have fixed line infrastructure. Unfortunately, even those companies who want to lay the fiber are not able to lay it because they don't get the right of way. You know, the cities, the municipal corporations, they don't allow the digging of the road. And, you know, many times it becomes very clumsy where three telecom companies are digging the road and laying their fiber. So this is becoming a very, very difficult situation. And unless we have fiberization in this country, we will not be able to, you know, really take it forward. Just to give you an idea, we have just about 20 million kilometers, 2 million kilometers of fiber, 2 million kilometers, which means 20 lakh kilometers of fiber. You know, China has got 449 million kilometers of fiber, which is 44 crore, 45 crore, you know, kilometers of fiber. So it's just about, you know, it's too much. You know, there's a huge difference, 50 times or I don't know how many times. So in fact, 2 billion kilometers of fiber China lays every year, and our cumulative fiber length is 2 billion kilometers. So we are really way behind the world, and of course comparable China or other things. You know, one can always say you can't compare with China because China is a huge you know, production hub of the whole world, and now it's very difficult. But at the same time, we can say if we are claiming to be leaders in the information and communication technology, I think we must make comparisons with China, because this is one area where we have quite good, because we command 56% of the world's, you know, the BPO, the outsourcing business in the whole world. So I think we are in a very good position to compare ourselves with China, but unfortunately we are not there. So one is the, you know, we have to think of ways and means to figure out as to how we increase our connectivity if we want to challenge this we want to really survive in this new world. And there are a number of things which TRAI has done in the past, and we are actually still pursuing those issues. One is, our thinking is that there are 165 million homes where cable television has gone. And cable television basically means the fiber has gone, or the coaxial cables have gone. And the right of way issues which I talked about have been solved by these providers. And therefore, you know, the same thing, if you just convert the coaxial cable into a fiber, you have a infrastructure ready-made to deliver broadband to the homes. And not only to 65 million homes, these lines pass through 150 million business establishment or homes. जब वो एक तरह से ले जाता है अपनी लाइन, तो अपना तो जाते जाते बाजार से होते हुए कहीं पेड़ से, कहीं किसी की छत पर, कहीं पर. So basically on the way it meets a number of you know, sort of homes or establishments, and all those entities can take advantage of this thing, provided that coaxial cable is changed into fiber. And fiber, for your kind information, is just about 50 rupees a meter. So it's very small, you know, prices. And in fact, India produces 40% of the world's fiber. Sterlite Industries, you know, Limited produces a huge amount of fiber, which we export in a big way. So I think we have that thing, and if we use this ready-made infrastructure, we can, you know, sort of fill this connectivity gap. And we have sort of given proposal to the government, and we have told them that it will be positive. And then of course we have also talked about WANI. You know, the WANI is basically Wi-Fi access network interface. So, you know, you must be now doing transactions on UPI, right? Google Pay or Phone Pay or many other instruments, and you do the transactions without paying any money. So you know that UPI is now one of the world's biggest transaction platforms or payment platforms. UPI does 1 billion plus transactions per month. And that's a very, very scalable stuff which India has done. And I think those kinds of similar UPI type of structure is what we want to do in the Wi-Fi access network, where we are saying that India should become a grid of Wi-Fi, so that your phone is latches onto a Wi-Fi, and then you can even purchase Wi-Fi, 2 rupees Wi-Fi or 5 rupees Wi-Fi for half an hour and stuff like that. Similar to public call office of the 20 years, 30 years back, you can have a public data office which is radiating the Wi-Fi. So every grocery shop owner can become a Wi-Fi radiation point. So there are a lot of other things. If you are interested, you can go to TRAI's website and figure out what is WANI, WANI, and what is the framework and what does it talk about. So that's one. Now the other requirement for living in this world will be software sort of systems, because even if you have connectivity, raw connectivity does not provide you any advantage unless you have softwares, unless you have a Zoom or unless you have video conferencing applications. Just by having the line does not do you any good. So therefore the software part, fortunately we are extremely good and we have done wonderful work. So let me begin with a project in which I was the CEO for initial 4 years, Aadhaar. So I was Nandan Nilekani was my chairman. I was the DG and CEO of Aadhaar starting 2009 to 13, before I came as Chief Secretary in Jharkhand. So there I think we had created the world's largest digital identity infrastructure. Now this is not a physical ID, it's not a physical card, it's actually a digital ID, which means you can plug it into any kind of transaction. So today you can do it, open a bank account, get a mobile SIM, all kinds, and do a direct benefit transfer. Today government is transferring 140 million credit transactions to the accounts, even in the what is called LPG subsidy. So all these things are enabled. And then we built on top of this digital ID a number of products, which typically people call NDI stack. So for example, we built the digital signature on demand, which we call eSign. We built a digital locker where you can keep your documents and digitally sign them. We also created electronic KYC, where you can open a bank account or get a mobile SIM or do any other things, and your electronic KYC goes into that company's database. So I think we created a number of these, and we created a digital consent artifact whereby you can give a digital token and you can do things. These are what is typically described today as NDI stack. So I think what we have done is we have created a platform which is the digital identity. On that platform, we have created a number of artifacts which actually are also pluggable in various kinds of transactions. And that, we have JAM, we called it JAM, government uses that, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile. So what happens is Aadhaar is used to open bank account, Jan Dhan accounts. So you have a financial, placeholder where I can transfer subsidy to that account. I can, you can do transactions. And you have mobile. Mobile can become a very powerful tool to communicate these transactions to you, similar to when you get when you do a banking transactions, you get a mobile notification that you have transferred so much of money or so much money has been debited or credited. So JAM, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile became an extremely powerful trinity to enable digital transactions. So and then we built UPI, Unified Payment Interface, which is actually you can transfer any from any bank account to any bank account money without paying nothing. It's just free. You must have experienced it. In fact, some of the providers also give you some rewards. Google Pay, if you use, you get rewards of that. So not only you don't pay anything, you even get rewards on that. Of course, they all trade on the data. So that's something. So I think what we have done, we have created a huge amount of digital sort of infrastructure, what we call the Aadhaar, the JAM, the NDI stack. So this actually has created a very, very powerful ecosystem of conducting digital transactions. Today, people talk of privacy, and today people talk of data consent, that you should not use data without a person's consent. We already have got consent artifact using Aadhaar, which means I can give you a digital token which is verifiable, which actually can figure out whether I have authorized you to share my information with somebody else, or so this is, and the concept of data fiduciary who work on behalf of the individuals, that has already been started by Reserve Bank of India to do a credit kind of stuff. So this is, we have built that great infrastructure. So I think from a software perspective, we are very confident that we will be able to survive this world, and not only survive, we will be able to prosper in this world. However, there are concerns on the hardware side, which is the connectivity side, which I think if we can solve that puzzle, I think we will be quite sort of good and we'll be quite capable. Also, we have the second largest startup system. And once these basic building blocks of things have been made, I think we will be able to make products for MSMEs. We will be able to make products for industrial automation. All kinds of products we can make, and there's a vibrant ecosystem of these players. In fact, one is able to make with these components which we have built, which I talked about. Payment platform, identity platform, all these platforms, we'll be able to kind of leverage these components, which will be able to do a lot of transactions, and we'll be able to build a whole ecosystem of things on that. So I think the world had changed. It is going to change, and we are going to experience new ways of working. And but we are sure that India, and of course there are multiple other things which I did not want to speak about. I told Rajiv that I'll not be able to speak on many of the things. One of the things, of course, is huge opportunity for India for becoming a manufacturing hub. After people start leaving China, China has a lot of credibility, and now people want to sort of de-risk their investments and their manufacturing and come to India. So there are multiple consequences which will happen, and we must, as a nation, we must take steps to kind of leverage this opportunity. We also must sort of spread to the world all these artifacts which we have made. We can so-called export these artifacts to the countries in Africa, to the other countries, and we can have what I describe as a digital diplomacy, which means we can teach the world as to how we can use our digital power and digital prowess to sort of help the other countries in the world. So I think they are some of the many other consequences are there. 20 minutes is a very short time nor am I an expert on this issue. So I talk about the connectivity and the software potential of this country and how we are going to deal with it. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Sir, many thanks for your insight. Just we want to have some question.
Sure.
As we all know that we are still far behind from China. But as you are rightly saying, that still we have a software skill quite ahead from China and all other countries also. Our point is that India is going to lead with software, and do we have enough artificial intelligence research where we can match those problems and address the bigger issue at a fuller length also? So why not? Why not? The question is, India at a larger scale, as we are having so many research organizations like ISRO, like National Institute of Virology, and there are so many laboratory and research organizations. Can we not have a great research organization from IT point of view, where people will do research on artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, machine learning, robotics at a centralized level? What's your view on that, sir?
I think, Rajiv, I think it would be a mistake to say that India is not working in these areas. It is, we are working on a number of areas, in fact, and our institutions are working vigorously. We are working on cloud computing, algorithms, automations, AI, Internet of Things, data analytics. These are the technologies on which we are all working. And of course, machine learning, data science, data engineering, cyber security, cloud computing, virtual reality, extended ER and VR, all these Internet of Things, all these areas are the areas in which we are working. and our research institutions are kind of working on that. Number one. Number two, we have lot of the software developers on these areas. For example, recently you must have seen the Prime Minister has launched the Arogya Setu platform, Arogya Setu application, and I'm sure many of you must have downloaded that. And there we are working on contract tracing. We are also working on applying artificial intelligence to draw meaningful conclusions. So I think these are things which are going to happen. And you are very right that we need to develop centers of excellence in these areas, because otherwise तो कोई ऐसे चलता रहेगा, ये चलने वाला काम नहीं चलेगा. Because I think we need to
we need a concrete platform where people will come forward and do the final research, where we can, as you are rightly saying, a center of excellence in that field also.
Absolutely. So I think we need to develop those things, and of course, in today's world, there will be collaborative learnings, which will ensure that everybody is able to collaborate on these areas. So we are working, and there are multiple platforms. Also, let me also say this, that till now the industry was not really, so much into it, in the sense that industry realized that, what is their, why do I have to do a remote, mining, or what is the scope for, let's say, driverless cars in this country and stuff like that. Now, today the industry is realizing that if there are activities which can be done without human beings, of course, it doesn't mean that human beings will not be utilized, but human beings can be utilized for much more, productive work. And this certain works which are routine nature and robotic type of works, they can be done through robotics and AI and other kinds of things. So I think things are developing very fast. And yes, you could imagine, even the corona analytics which is happening, and you have heard that India is participating in the vaccine program also. The genome, sort of analysis which is done in a matter of hours. It used to take, years together for very fast, so-called fast computers. So I think things are happening. We should develop the centers of excellence. And the research quality must go up, and I'm sure we will succeed in that.
We are having, sir, big institutes here, those who are working on it. But just to come as a collaborative approach, that is very important, and certainly it will help overall in a general parlance to everyone. In the current scenario, everyone is talking about the health conditions, sir. With this virus, it's totally uncertain where we will go further, and how to use this technology, through AI to just monitor and to create some solution to find out as a precautionary measure. From a startup point of view, people are working here, sir, and they're just trying to figure out something also. At your level, what do you think the scope and future of health industry with you when you amalgamate with AI and other thing? So how it is possible it will disrupt the whole scenario in future?
I think it's a very important question, because what is going to happen is that the health industry is the one which is going to see a huge, kind of requirement of, people will require more healthcare. Of course, they do already, but also the fact as to how we can provide healthcare in a most frugal manner. Because let's understand, India, any innovation succeeds in India only if it is scalable, because we are 1.3 billion people. It is cheap or frugal, which means it is not very costly. Also, it is interoperable, which means India is too big for one company or two companies to provide the solution. You need to have an interplay of large number of companies. So it has to be interoperable. It should be scalable. It should be speedy, and it should be frugal. So similarly, for example, imagine UPI. If if UPI or bank transactions were charging, let's say even 1%, nobody will do UPI. You remember the NEFT or RTGS charges some money. Now people don't want to do NEFT and RTGS. People want to do things in UPI which is free of cost. So we are great people in terms of, for us, the best 4-letter word is FREE.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think this is very important for us to understand. Now, what is going to happen is, if we are able to build a platform which can provide, which can involve all the laboratories. Imagine, UPI is a framework which can enable transfer from any mobile, any wallet or any mobile or anything to any bank, or even, taxi wala can make a call collect kind of call saying that pay me 200 rupees and the message will come and you just have to tick and it goes. So it's so easy. I used to say that, transferring money should be as easy as making a phone call. In fact, it has become easier than making a phone call. So now the question is, in the health industry, what is going to happen is everything is going to become virtual.
Yes.
Virtual as in, it's not going to be physical. So for example, if I am sitting in a village and if I have, because of the ubiquitous connectivity and the, today people are making video calls. All the poor people sitting in, probably stuck in Punjab or Delhi are making video calls to their families in Bihar or Jharkhand. If they have that smartphone or whatever. And I think a smartphone is not too costly nowadays. So basically, if you have that video kind of facility available, so you can have video consultation. What you need is, of course, regulatory system change where you must recognize the prescription given digitally. And now we have digital artifacts which can have a digital signatures. So the doctor can prescribe the prescriptions on video and which can be digitally signed and which can be honored by any pharmacy. So imagine if all the players in this game, which is the pharmacies, the testing labs, the doctors, the hospitals, and other institutions, if they come and technology people, AI and machine learning is used in diagnostics. So all the great diagnostic tools come. And if all these tools are made available as public good as in, like in Aadhaar is a public good. Public goods are those goods which have a non-revelous use. As if 2 people use it, then it's not like an exhaustible resource which will get exhausted if more people use it. In fact, the more people use it, it will continue to be as available to everybody without any rivalry to it. So therefore, if you have such sort of systems which can make available these things, then every citizen will have, like he goes on a platform of Amazon and he says, "Bhai, mujhe falani cheez kharidni hai." So similarly, he will say, "I am having these symptoms, I want to consult a doctor," and there'll be a doctor somewhere in the ecosystem. It can come depending on his local language and other kinds of things. So it can become an extremely powerful, way of, and most efficient way and most frugal way of delivering services. Also, the Ayushman Bharat program of our Prime Minister, which actually has created, which is provided to 50 crore people of this country, the facilities, and where it's a paperless, process of insurance payment to the delivery of. Similarly, we can tie it up with Ayushman Bharat, and we do it in a way that it is all recorded, it's all transparent, it's all traceable. Then it is possible to create that open health systems network, what we are calling OCEAN, and which actually is what I have proposed in this committee, which I am actually a member of, saying that now we need to do more than telemedicine. All these guys are doing telemedicines. I can see Sunil also. We have all been doing telemedicines, and we are talking about it. But actually, telemedicine becomes a part of this larger open health systems network, where we use telemedicine as a means to connect the doctors, and it need not be. Currently, what is happening is these are all silo solutions. Suppose I am a telemedicine fellow, I connect some hospital, मैंने कुछ hospital पकड़ लिया, वो doctors हैं, वो मेरे उस पे है, और मैंने कुछ अपने labs की बात कर ली. So I am each working in a silo. What we want is, we want to have a complete interoperable system where where you get things, like in policybazaar.com or something, you get a real-time stuff, who will give you the cheap or who will give you the most reliable, and there'll be ratings of various various players. So I think this whole thing can actually become UPI of the health services, which will be so good for our country, which will provide huge coverage, health coverage to our country. And I think this is going to happen in the post-corona world.
Sir, a few questions people are raising, that when we talk about data, security comes first. And with all cyber security, people are facing lots of problems. In India, because of unawareness, a little bit less education, and huge population, when we talk about to spread this IT to each and every one, security is a major concern, sir. What's your view and how we can take it forward?
See, let's call this whole security issue in two parts. One part is basically systemic security. Systemic security as in when you store the data on the back end or front end or whatever, whether you can ensure that the data is secure and it cannot be, sort of stolen by the hackers or cracked and all that. So that's one part. Data security is data security at that end. Data privacy is another issue,
Correct.
which is basically, saying that my data should not be tampered with or stolen or used for the purpose for which I have not granted that permission. So the citizen must be in control of his or her data. So that's data privacy. So data privacy and data security, typically they are all, we don't really, many people don't understand that there is a difference between these two. Data privacy relates to the unauthorized use of data, and data security deals with the issue of securing the data and from the hackers and from those types of things. So these two are things which we will have to continuously grapple with, and as the solutions, as the problems will emerge, solutions will also emerge. So it's a continuous battle. When you are having your ship in the sea, you have to do a lot of preventive measures to ensure that the ship is safe. The best place, as they say, for a ship is to be anchored in a harbor, but that's not that's not the way it is. We have to live with these risks, and we have to counter these risks. That's how life goes on. But there is another aspect which you pointed out and which you probably were referring to, is the awareness part of it. Somebody calls you saying that I'm State Bank of India से बोल रहा हूँ, आपका जो है डेबिट कार्ड और क्रेडिट कार्ड आपका खत्म होने वाला है, मैं आपकी मदद कर सकता हूँ और आपका ये है. तो these are fraudsters. And interestingly, I saw a film the serial called Jamtara.
Yes, sir, yes.
Jamtara has emerged. We have the proud ownership of Jamtara. So actually, and it's very interesting. If you see the serial, and I'm told some friend of mine had gone to Jamtara and they found that the guys are not extremely bright, tech-savvy fellows, but they have mastered the art of sort of this deceiving people and kind of luring people into their net. So that's their USP, not so much their IP addressing system and spoofing system. They are not technology savvy. They are just savvy in terms of expressing this thing. So that is something which one will have to continuously educate people, continuously keep on telling people. That's the only way. Otherwise, you tell them that, oh, because it is so unsafe, therefore we should not do it. That's not the way, because the advantages of using a system far outweigh the fraud which can take place, and there are methods which can be deployed. So, for example, recently TRAI has deployed what is called the mobile revocation list. Unfortunately, unlike Aadhaar, mobile number, if it is revoked, it can be reused to another person. So what happens if your bank has got your mobile number and it is given to another person? The other person has the potential of stealing your identity. And therefore, it is important that we publicly declare that these mobile numbers have been revoked. And of course, the banks or the other institutions can update their list. So we will have to continuously struggle and continuously create awareness, as also the kind of systems will have to evolve. But I think data security and data privacy at the back end is extremely important. Unauthorized use of data is also one big problem. You must have heard of Cambridge Analytica. You must have heard of many Facebook accounts being stolen. So there are multiple problems which even big corporates have, and they sometimes don't do things in an innocuous manner. They do things because data is a new oil, as people say. So if you can't sort of, if you can sell data, you can earn. One of the reasons why Google Pay is giving rewards to you is not because they are very charitable, but it's because the data which you give to them relating to your transactions, they are aware of all the transaction data which you are doing with your banks. They know, and they know which companies can target you for giving credit to you, you are credit worthy or not. All these things are data. So data is the one which is propelling their business. Ultimately, Google has got the valuation of Google, I don't know how many trillions it is. That is because of I mean, they don't own any of these machines and other things, but they are just data owners, and that's how they survive.
So you're right, sir. Presently, what's happening all across the world, we have learned again how to collaborate. And the new collaboration, what we are seeing, Jio and Facebook. So with this deal, the basic concern of as an Indian, what would be the case of net neutrality position? Will it be at a high risk?
Well, that is a very, very important question, and let me confess that I have not really examined this deal as yet in detail so as to see its implications on the principles of net neutrality. The broad principles of net neutrality is that no telecom operator shall be able to stop, throttle, provide a fast lane for any kind of data. So whether it's a data relating to subject X or subject Y and coming from Rajiv or coming from R.S. Sharma or Sunil Bardwal, it should be treated equally in terms of tariffs, etc. That's the principle. We are yet to analyze. In fact, I have requested my colleagues in TRAI to really go into the deal, because we have only seen the deal only in newspapers and some editorials. We are examining the details of this deal, and you can be rest assured that if it violates or if it impinges on any of the principles of net neutrality, we will certainly take action.
Yes. One major question coming from few participants, sir. For large industries, they are coping with IT and all other advancement. Their major challenge is from SME and MSME sector, because they are not well equipped, well trained, and they don't have that capacity also to implement those IT tools in their business. So do you think that it's a big challenge for them also in the long run? Either they need to accept and implement those technology in their business, or how to implement it. What's your view on that?
See, what is happening is if we, for example, me and Sunil Bardwal created what is called the statewide area network, kind of SWAN. And in that way of things, we said that we will have a data center, we will have the lease lines, and we will have the telephones at the block level, and it will be an infrastructure owned and operated by us. That's the paradigm at that point in time. If today we were making the statewide area network, we will say we will have our data on the on some cloud service provider, at least the non-sensitive data. We will have there could be other ways of doing things. So similarly, what is happening is that nowadays you don't have to build a software, you don't have to purchase hardware, you don't have to do many things. You can have what is called software as service. So basically, you just buy the service, you don't buy the software, you don't buy the hardware. So this is a new world in which the same software provider can provide service to multiple entities, and that will actually make these services quite cheap and onboarding on these services quite easy. So an MSME can, doesn't have to learn the entire software stack. MSME can just buy or purchase the services on a sort of compute basis, or on whatever, there are multiple ways of procuring these services, whether you store the data data volume is the one, or any other kinds of parameters. So that way, I think this is easy today than it was maybe about 10 years back, number one. Number two, I think what is going to happen is somehow the MSMEs or small, entrepreneurs, or even the guys who are in the unorganized sectors, they were not very keen to, they were afraid of this IT tools, etc. What will I, how will I do it? Kind of psychological fear, similar to what we were afraid of, doing we were more comfortable if I could have flown to Ranchi, and, we would have had a conference in a hall, and, everybody would have said that would have been much better. But you see, it is as comfortable as being in Ranchi.
Correct.
So similarly, it's a question of attitude and approach, and I think those things will have to change. And I'm sure in this world, people will come up with software solutions which can be used easily by MSMEs. So I don't see a great challenge. It's only a question of adaptability, which will have to come. After all, circumstances do make people adaptive. As I said, I am also washing utensils, and I never washed utensils in my life, but आज बर्तन मांज रहे हैं हम तो, मतलब ultimately I am getting quite adaptive to these things, but that's how things happen.
Sir, we are having one participant, Mr. Sunil Barnwal, sir.
Yes.
Work with you.
I can see him.
Given
one of my favorite.
Yeah, very relevant question. What should be the policy response to need of IT and ITS requirement post COVID-19, sir?
No, the policy response, as I said, it requires two things. One is the connectivity. So I think thus far, my view is personally view. Of course, I don't speak for the government, but even as chairman of TRAI, my view has been that somehow we have been jinxed. The connectivity piece in India has been jinxed. You have heard that AGR decision, 92,000 crores and all that kind of thing. So it's a complete. It's a very difficult situation, and that situation has been created probably because of what we decided way back in 2000 of a revenue share arrangement. See, the policy is not really great. Now that we are behind this Supreme Court judgment, I think we can, what is called reboot the entire process, and we can have a relook at the entire licensing framework. And my view has been, and I've given to the government, saying that you can probably charge a license fee and should charge a license fee, whichever way that is. But those things which don't use the natural resources, for example, fiber does not use any natural resource. Yes. The wireless things use the natural resource, which is the spectrum, but fiber does not. And therefore, those guys who provide fixed broadband, fixed line connectivity, for example, cable TV fellows don't pay any money. Cable TV fellows also, electrons actually pass through those lines, but they don't pay anything. So I think we need to have a policy response in that sense, policy response as in taxation response. Second, we also need to realize that connectivity is going to be the single most important piece. And it is going to, the connectivity is not really a vertical in itself. It's going to be a platform or a horizontal facility which is going to work across all things. Today, IT is pervasive in almost every sector of the economy. You can't think of doing anything without using the information and communication technology tools. So I think that central role, the platform role of IT and telecommunication has got to be realized. And I'm sure the government is quite alive to that situation. And that is very important. In fact, we should not so much bother about, I mean, after all, if we are giving so many reliefs in many sectors, we must provide this relief to this sector to say that this sector is an infrastructure sector. This is the most important sector. And, we ourselves have, as I said in the beginning, after all, we are feeling not so lonely in this corona, in this lockdown, because of this connectivity only. We are able to talk to each other. We are able to communicate ideas. I mean, that is the most important part. And I think that should be realized, the central role of connectivity in these.
And that's the best and beauty of this technology and network also, sir.
Yeah.
So one last question, I think is very relevant.
Yeah.
People talking about mega trends in India, sir.
Post-COVID.
mega trends in India and post COVID-19,
Uh-huh.
how we are well prepared in terms of providing basic infrastructure, IT infrastructure to all those international players who wants to come to India, invest and expand in a better way. So are we well prepared in that way?
No, one is, as I said, the mega trends. One of the mega trends is going to be shifting of manufacturing from China to India. I mean, China
Or
to
another
any
country
country or
also?
other countries. Only thing is, India must capitalize on that. India must sort of
Very true.
seize this opportunity. So that's one part which is very important. And I think the work from home is also going to be a big mega trend.
True.
Education, remote education is going to be another very, very important trend. The technology adoption by senior citizens is going to be an extremely important trend because, you know, till
Yes.
now, I mean, I'm also in that senior category, but you know, there are people who say, "Bhai, humse ye nahi hoga, aap alag kar lijiye ye." This is, you know, I can't use the smartphone, I can't use this. So that's one part. This is going to be app-based economy, as they say. The economy is going to become app-based.
Correct.
The e-commerce is going to flourish, and nowadays, of course, people are talking about e-commerce with the, you know, combination of in a hybrid model of digital commerce as also a pop and mom store which is nearby a store. So this is, I think, going to happen, and the other things which are going to happen is a demographic change, which is the workforce distribution, which is going to take place a lot. You know, this workforce is going to be divided. India, as you know, is a young country, and I think we need to leverage that. Contactless technology is going to come more and more. That's going to happen. And of course, as I said, shift in global economic power.
True.
The other mega trend is going to be probably a good mega trend, I should say, climate change.
Yes. Yes.
And that is something which one is seeing already, because
Yeah.
things have become much more cleaner. People can see peaks of Himalayas from their homes, so it's really something
Correct.
wonderful. And you know, the birds have started coming, and things are reversing back. The mother nature is again taking so that's one great trend, and I think we should realize by seeing this trend that it is possible to have a harmonious relationship between the development and environment, and I think that's
Correct.
another trend which is going to develop.
Sir, students of Young India, they also want to hear you, because with technology advancement, they have fear that job will reduce. What's your message to them?
I don't really think so, because my feeling is that why not our young India, why don't we become technology savvy itself? Why don't we utilize that technology? How are we? Know we are Indians have the best brains in the whole world. You know, imagine.
True.
Doctors, engineers, any area you see, we have best talents in the world. We are very good in mathematics. We are very good in analytics. So I think as a country, we should not be afraid. In fact, we have experience has proved again and again that when we were not afraid, we were able to take things head on. Imagine, you know, at one point in time, we were so much worried about the imported cars. You know, we thought that the ambassador is the only thing, and if ambassador agar import allow kar diya, to everybody will be, you know, take away the whole thing.
Yes.
Now, look, we were able to compete, and today India is actually one of the largest, you know, producer of the auto components. Jamshedpur, our Jamshedpur is an example of that. So I think we should not be afraid, and wherever we have taken the challenges head on, we have always succeeded. So I think this whole kind of mentality which we suffered for a long time, that, you know, we did not have confidence in ourselves. That confidence, I think we have proved many times again and again that this confidence is not something which it's only a psychological issue. So I think young boys and girls should really go into that area. They can be extremely productive citizens of this country, and I think the future belongs to them, not to us. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very true, sir. So last question, sir.
You
Future
said
of
that last
5G.
one was the last, right?
Yeah, future of 5G in India. Where do you find India in next 5 to 10 years, sir?
You see, I think this trend which has happened, the post-corona world, the 5G will get accelerated to some extent. The Internet of Things, for example, the connectivity. For example, we are not able to take fiber to home to each place, but fixed wireless access is something which 5G can provide us. So it will happen. However, let us also realize that after all, it is not the government who is going to put investment in 5G. It is the private sector entrepreneurs who will do that. And they always do that when they find a business case. So we should understand that, and India will have to find its own use cases of 5G. It can't be, people talk of what is 5G? Oh, you can have driverless cars, you can have remote surgery, you can have, what is this? This is not required in India. You don't require driverless cars in India.
True.
So essentially what is going to happen is we will have to figure out what are the use cases for our country and whether these use cases will be able to provide the return on the investment which the business people make. So that is the same thing.
Yes.
And let's also realize that 5G proponents are today those countries which are actually manufacturing 5G components and 5G routers and 5G stuff. Korea and China and other kinds of countries. We should always make our own choices and our own decisions. It's good to say that yes, 5G must come, but at the same time, we must assess whether the country will be able to provide use cases and business cases for 5G adoption. So if it is not, then, and obviously this decision will be taken by the business people. Government can only look at a spectrum. And of course, which we have recommended, of course, industry is saying that we have put very high price on the spectrum.
It's always good, sir. It's always good to set our priority. And with that priority, we read the world and say to the world, this is what we mean to say. And that's how we can bring the valuable change in the society.
But I wish, this particular conference, if we were able to have individual questions from individual people, it would have been better because that would have provided a real interactivity. The other day, I had a conference with IAMAI, what is called Internet and Mobile Association of India. There were about 200 people in the video conference. The Zoom happened, and they had organized it in such a manner that there was a table, and on each table somebody was sitting, and then somebody was speaking. So it is a very interactive conference. Probably you can do it next time when you do it.
Certainly,
you
sir.
do it in a way that you use the full potential, so that we are able to see everybody interacting and talking.
Okay. Sure, sir. That's a very nice suggestion, and certainly we will take it forward. So, in the last, sir, your final statement about India.
Look, I am too small a fellow to give any final statement about anything. So don't get that part.
For next year, where you find India in next 10 years?
I am an extremely optimistic person, and I think that
very true,
we all have a great future. And only thing is, we should remain focused. We should not dissipate our energies into unnecessary things, which we many times start doing. But short of that, I think we are quite fine, and I think this too shall pass away. This whole crisis type of situation. This too shall pass away, and we will have, of course, whether I will survive Corona or Corona will survive me is a question. All these old senior people, that's a challenge, but I think the world is.
Let us take this challenge, sir. We all are optimistic. Absolutely. We all are optimistic, and it's a wonderful session and wonderful insight from you, sir. We all loved, and it helped us a lot to broaden our view also, to understand how the things are going. And with this technology, yes, India is moving ahead, and India at a positive note, things will change for betterment. Everyone will get some better thing in future. We will overcome this crisis. It's a temporary and for a short time. So we from heart, sir, thank you for your insightful suggestion and all your insight what you have shared. So again, thank you, and thanks all my participants, my senior officials, my teammates. We loved you as our main esteemed speaker, sir. It's a great moment for all of us. So thank everyone for this wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and I enjoyed the talk, and let's hope that next time I be there in Ranchi and talk to
Yeah,
you personally.
that would be great. Yeah.
Bye bye, Sunil. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye, sir.
Thank you.